Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the stars drift past through the main viewing screen. The ship had been traveling for 3 weeks through the Outer Rim territories on a routine survey mission. His crew was small but experienced. Lisa Park worked in engineering, keeping their systems running smoothly. Dr. Sam Torres handled medical duties and biological surveys. Amy Carter managed communications and sensor data. Ryan Bell took care of security and weapons systems. Jake had been commanding exploration vessels for 12 years. He knew the dangers of deep space travel, but also understood the importance of expanding human knowledge about the galaxy. Earth needed to know what was out there beyond the established trade routes. The New Horizon was equipped with the latest scanning equipment and defensive systems, but Jake preferred to avoid trouble when possible. The ship's sensors picked up an unusual reading ahead. Amy turned from her station with a concerned expression on her face. She reported that they were detecting a vessel approximately 2 light hours away. The ship appeared to be drifting without power and was broadcasting what seemed to be distress signals. The signals were not in any known human language, but the pattern suggested someone needed help. Jake studied the sensor readings carefully. The vessel was large and appeared to be of unknown design. Its energy signature was fading, which indicated serious power problems. Standard exploration protocols required them to investigate and offer assistance to any vessel in distress, regardless of species or origin. Jake had followed these protocols many times before and saved several crews over the years. Lisa confirmed that their own systems were operating normally and they had plenty of power and supplies to assist another vessel. Dr. Torres prepared medical equipment in case there were injured beings aboard the distressed ship. Ryan checked their defensive systems and found everything ready, but Jake hoped weapons would not be necessary. First contact situations required careful handling and peaceful intentions. The New Horizon changed course and began approaching the unknown vessel. As they drew closer, the ship became visible on their screens. It was definitely alien in design, with smooth curved surfaces and strange geometric patterns along its hull. The vessel was nearly twice the size of the New Horizon, but showed no signs of weapons or hostile intent. Multiple sections of the ship were dark, indicating extensive power failures. Amy tried to establish communication using standard first contact protocols. She broadcast greetings in several human languages and universal mathematical sequences. After several minutes, they received a response. The alien signals were weak and filled with static, but seemed to be requesting immediate assistance. The transmission included what appeared to be life support readings showing critical system failures. Jake made the decision to move in closer and offer help. This was exactly the kind of situation that exploration crews trained for. Making peaceful contact with new species and providing humanitarian aid was a core part of their mission. The New Horizon approached carefully with all sensors active and communication channels open. When they were within visual range, Jake could see that the alien vessel was indeed in serious trouble. Sections of the hull showed damage and several areas were venting atmosphere. If there were living beings aboard, they would not survive much longer without assistance. Jake ordered Lisa to prepare emergency power transfer equipment, while Dr. Torres gathered medical supplies for potential alien physiology. The alien ship suddenly began powering up its systems. What had appeared to be a dying vessel moments before was now showing full power signatures across all sections. Weapon ports opened along its hull, revealing massive energy cannons pointed directly at the New Horizon. Jake realized with growing horror that they had walked directly into an elaborate trap. Amy's communications board lit up with incoming signals, but these were not distress calls. The alien vessel was coordinating with other ships that were now decloaking around them. The New Horizon found itself surrounded by 5 heavily armed warships that had been hiding using advanced stealth technology. Jake had never seen ships that could completely mask their presence from human sensors. The lead alien vessel transmitted a clear message in perfect English. The voice was cold and mechanical without any trace of emotion. They identified themselves as representatives of the Zephyrian Empire and demanded immediate surrender. Any resistance would result in the destruction of the New Horizon and the death of all humans aboard. Jake had 30 seconds to comply with their demands. Ryan immediately brought their weapons online, but Jake knew they were hopelessly outgunned. 5 alien warships against 1 exploration vessel was not a fight they could win. Their only advantages were speed and maneuverability, but even those would not help them escape from an ambush this carefully planned. The aliens had studied human exploration patterns and prepared this trap specifically for ships like the New Horizon. Jake tried to buy time by requesting clarification of their demands, but the alien commander was not interested in negotiations. They wanted the human crew captured alive for research purposes. The Zephyrians had been observing human space for some time and had decided that humans possessed certain qualities that required further study. Jake and his crew were to be specimens in an alien laboratory. The alien ships began moving into capture formation. Energy beams struck the New Horizons' engines, disabling their ability to escape. Additional beams targeted their weapon systems and communications array. Within minutes, the human ship was completely helpless and surrounded by alien vessels that could destroy them at any moment. Lisa reported that life support was still functioning, but they had no power for movement or defense. Alien boarding craft detached from the warships and approached the New Horizon. Jake ordered his crew to prepare for capture but to remain alert for any opportunity to escape or resist. He had read reports about alien species that took prisoners, but had never encountered anything like the Zephyrians. Their technology was far more advanced than anything humans had developed, and their tactics showed careful planning and intelligence gathering. The boarding craft, attached to the New Horizons, airlocks and alien soldiers entered the ship. They were tall humanoid beings wearing advanced armor and carrying energy weapons. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but their movements showed military precision and training. They moved through the ship systematically, capturing each crew member without unnecessary violence, but with absolute efficiency. Jake was the last to be taken. As alien soldiers surrounded him on the bridge, he took one final look at his ship and his crew. He had failed to protect them from this trap, but he was already beginning to analyze their captors, looking for weaknesses and opportunities. The Zephyrians had made one critical mistake in their careful planning. They had captured Jake Morrison, but they had no idea what kind of enemy they had just made for themselves. The transport ship carried Jake and his crew through hyperspace for what felt like days, but could have been weeks. The Zephyrians had separated them into individual holding cells that blocked any communication between the humans. Jake spent the time studying his captors and memorizing every detail about their ship's layout and security procedures. The guards rotated every 6 hours and always traveled in pairs. Their weapons were energy-based and their armor looked advanced, but Jake noticed they moved with the confidence of beings who had never faced serious resistance. When the transport finally dropped out of hyperspace, Jake could see their destination through a small window in his cell. The moon called Kepler-7 hung in space like a gray stone surrounded by defense platforms and patrol ships. The surface was covered with massive structures that looked like they had been built into the rock itself. This was clearly a major installation designed to hold many prisoners securely. The prison facility was enormous, with multiple levels extending deep underground. Jake counted at least 50 landing pads for transport ships and hundreds of guard towers positioned around the perimeter. Energy barriers flickered between the towers, creating an invisible wall that would stop any escape attempt. The whole place radiated the kind of permanent security that came from years of successful operation. Warden Zekroth was waiting when Jake's transport landed. The alien was taller than the soldiers and wore elaborate robes that marked him as someone of high rank. His face was angular with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to study Jake like a scientist examining a new specimen. The warden spoke perfect English and seemed genuinely curious about his new human prisoners. The warden explained that Kepler-7 held the most dangerous and interesting specimens from across the galaxy. Each prisoner had been selected for specific qualities that made them valuable for research purposes. Humans were a new addition to their collection, and the Zephyrian Empire was very interested in understanding what made them different from other species they had conquered. Jake was assigned to a cell in the maximum security section, along with other prisoners considered especially dangerous. His cell was a small room with basic facilities and walls made of some kind of energy-resistant material. A force field covered the entrance that would deliver a painful shock to anyone who touched it. Security cameras watched from every angle, and guards patrolled the corridor outside every few minutes. The first few days were spent in isolation, while the prison staff ran their initial tests. Jake was subjected to physical examinations, psychological evaluations, and intelligence assessments. The Zephyrian doctors were particularly interested in human pain tolerance and recovery rates. They seemed surprised that Jake showed no signs of breaking under interrogation, techniques that apparently worked on other species. Dr. Torres had been taken to the medical wing where alien doctors studied her knowledge of human biology. Lisa was assigned to the engineering section, where her technical skills were being analyzed. Amy was placed in the communications center where Zephyrian linguists tested her ability to translate human languages. Ryan was locked in solitary confinement after he attempted to resist during processing. Jake gradually made contact with other prisoners in his section. The alien next to his cell was named Corvin and belonged to a species called Andorians who could change their physical appearance at will. Corvin had been captured during a resistance operation against Zephyrian occupation forces. He had been in prison for 3 years and knew more about the facility than anyone else. Across the corridor was a prisoner called Nexus who had once been an assassin for a criminal organization before being captured by Zephyrian security forces. Nexus had cybernetic implants that enhanced his physical abilities, but the prison systems kept them mostly disabled. He was bitter about his capture but respected Jake's military background and tactical thinking. The third prisoner Jake befriended was Quayla, who possessed psychic abilities that allowed her to sense emotions and sometimes read surface thoughts. Her species had been nearly wiped out by the Zephyrian Empire, but a few survivors like her were kept alive for study. She was quiet and careful, but Jake sensed she had inner strength that the aliens had not broken. These 3 prisoners became Jake's first allies in understanding how the prison operated. Corvin explained the guard rotations and security procedures. Nexus knew which systems were most vulnerable to sabotage. Quayla could sense when guards were approaching and warn the others. Together they began mapping the prison's weaknesses and looking for opportunities. The warden took personal interest in Jake after the first week of testing. Zekroth was fascinated by human psychological resilience and wanted to understand how Jake maintained his composure under interrogation. The warden designed increasingly complex scenarios to test Jake's decision-making abilities and leadership qualities. Each session provided Jake with more intelligence about Zephyrian thinking and military doctrine. Jake learned that the Zephyrian Empire was preparing for a massive invasion of human space. They had been studying captured humans to identify weaknesses that could be exploited during the attack. The research at Kepler-7 was designed to help them understand how to break human resistance and control human populations after conquest. During one interrogation session, Jake discovered that the Zephyrians had seriously underestimated human capabilities. Their intelligence reports described humans as physically weak and mentally fragile compared to most galactic species. They expected human civilization to collapse quickly once their military forces were defeated. The warden seemed confident that the invasion would succeed within months. Jake realized that escaping from Kepler-7 was not enough. He needed to warn Earth about the coming invasion and prove to the galaxy that humans were far more dangerous than the Zephyrians believed. The prison had become his base of operations for planning something much larger than a simple escape. He would turn their own research facility against them. The other prisoners began to see Jake differently as he demonstrated tactical thinking and leadership abilities that impressed even beings from warrior cultures. His calm confidence and willingness to share information and resources earned their respect. Word spread through the prison's underground communication network about the human who treated other species as equals rather than competitors. Jake spent his days enduring tests and interrogations, while secretly building a network of allies throughout the facility. He was gathering intelligence about Zephyrian military capabilities, prison security systems, and the locations of other facilities. The aliens thought they were studying a helpless specimen, but Jake was preparing to show them what humans could really accomplish when properly motivated. Jake had been in prison for 6 weeks when he began implementing his plan to build a resistance network throughout the facility. His approach was careful and methodical because one mistake would mean death or worse torture for everyone involved. The key was to start small and build trust gradually, while appearing to be nothing more than another broken prisoner to the guards. His first step was establishing communication with his scattered crew members. Ryan had been moved from solitary confinement to a work detail in the prison's maintenance section. Jake used Quayla's psychic abilities to pass simple messages during the brief moments when Ryan's work brought him near the maximum security wing. The messages were basic but confirmed that all crew Members were alive and being held in different sections of the facility. Dr. Torres was working in the medical wing under close supervision, but she had found ways to help injured prisoners while appearing to cooperate with her captors. She discovered that many alien species shared similar biochemistry and could be treated with modified human medical techniques. Her kindness toward other prisoners was earning respect throughout the facility, even though she could not communicate directly with most of them. Lisa had been assigned to help maintain the prison's mechanical systems because her engineering knowledge was valuable to the Zephyrians. She was learning how their technology worked, while secretly identifying critical systems that could be sabotaged. Her work gave her access to areas of the prison that other prisoners never saw, including power distribution centers and communication networks. Amy was being used to analyze intercepted human communications and translate them for Zephyrian intelligence officers. This gave her access to information about human space defenses and military preparations. She began carefully feeding false information back to her captors while gathering intelligence about their invasion plans. Her linguistic skills made her valuable enough that the guards were less suspicious of her activities. Jake used his daily interrogation sessions with Warden Zekroth to gather more information about Zephyrian military doctrine and strategic thinking. He presented himself as a defeated officer who was gradually breaking under pressure and becoming willing to cooperate. The warden believed he was slowly extracting valuable intelligence from Jake, but actually Jake was learning far more about his enemies than they were learning about humans. The warden revealed that the Zephyrian Empire had conquered 17 different star systems over the past century. Their standard approach was to capture key leaders and study them to understand how each species thought and fought. This information was used to design psychological warfare, techniques and occupation strategies that would break resistance before it could form effectively. Jake realized that the Zephyrians had made the same mistake. With every species they conquered, they assumed that understanding individual psychology would give them insight into how entire civilizations would respond to conquest. They had never encountered a species like humans who could adapt their tactics and unite under pressure in ways that their models could not predict accurately. During his third month in prison, Jake began expanding his network beyond his immediate cell block. Corvin's shape-shifting abilities allowed him to take the appearance of guards during shift changes and deliver messages to prisoners in other sections. Nexus used his knowledge of security systems to identify blind spots where prisoners could meet briefly without being observed by cameras. The network grew slowly but steadily as prisoners from different species began working together in ways that surprised even Jake. A reptilian warrior named Vash, who had led resistance forces on his homeworld, began training other prisoners in combat techniques. An insectoid engineer called Click started mapping the prison's structural weaknesses and identifying potential escape routes. Jake's reputation spread through the underground communication network that existed among prisoners. Stories were told about the human who shared food with weaker prisoners, protected others from guard abuse, and treated every species with equal respect. This behavior was unusual enough in the harsh prison environment that it attracted attention from beings who had given up hope. The most important addition to Jake's network was an elderly prisoner named Elder Thane, who belonged to a species called the Mystics. Thane had been imprisoned for over 20 years and had observed the rise and fall of many resistance attempts. He understood better than anyone how the prison's security systems worked and which approaches had failed in the past. Thane explained that previous escape attempts had failed because they focused on breaking out individual prisoners, rather than creating systematic change. The Zephyrians always recaptured or killed escapees because their technology and resources were superior to anything prisoners could acquire. The only way to succeed was to turn the prison itself into a weapon against the Empire. Jake began developing a plan that went far beyond simple escape. He would use the prison's communication systems to coordinate uprisings throughout the Zephyrian Empire while simultaneously broadcasting intelligence about their invasion plans to human, space, and other free civilizations. The prison break would be the spark that ignited a galaxy-wide rebellion. His crew members played crucial roles in developing this larger strategy. Dr. Torres identified which alien species had the physical capabilities needed for different aspects of the operation. Lisa mapped the technical systems that would need to be controlled or destroyed during the breakout. Amy analyzed communication protocols and identified ways to broadcast messages beyond the prison's jammers. Ryan began training. Select prisoners in human military tactics adapted for the mixed species environment. His sessions were disguised as recreational activities, but were actually teaching coordination techniques and small unit tactics to beings who had never worked together effectively. The training built both skills and trust among potential resistance members. Jake spent months building relationships with prisoners from dozens of different species. Each group brought unique abilities and knowledge that could be useful during the operation. Some species had natural camouflage abilities while others possessed enhanced strength or speed. Several had technological knowledge that complemented human strategic thinking. The network eventually included over 200 prisoners, spread throughout different sections of the facility. They communicated through a complex system of signals and messages that avoided detection by prison security systems. Each member understood only their specific role in the larger plan to prevent security breaches if anyone was captured and interrogated. Jake knew that the breakout would need to accomplish multiple objectives simultaneously. They had to disable the prison's defenses, capture communication equipment, rescue prisoners from different sections, acquire transportation, and fight their way past orbital defenses. The operation would require perfect timing and coordination between groups that had never worked together. Most importantly, Jake understood that success would depend on proving to the galaxy that the Zephyrian Empire could be defeated. The prison break had to be spectacular enough to inspire other resistance movements while demonstrating human leadership capabilities that could unite different species against a common enemy. The real battle would begin after they escaped. Jake chose the day of the breakout carefully after months of preparation and observation. The prison operated on a predictable schedule, and he had identified a window when guard rotations would create the maximum confusion. The plan would begin during the morning shift, change when security was temporarily reduced in several key areas simultaneously. Lisa had spent weeks introducing tiny flaws into the prison's maintenance, systems that would cascade into major failures at precisely the right moment. She programmed power fluctuations that would disable security cameras in specific sectors, while leaving others operational to avoid triggering emergency protocols. Her sabotage was so subtle that the alien engineers blamed equipment age rather than deliberate interference. Dr. Torres had been secretly treating injured prisoners with medicines she created from available materials in the medical wing. More importantly, she had been studying Zephyrian biology and discovered that their enhanced senses made them vulnerable to certain chemical compounds. She developed a gas that would temporarily blind and disorient Zephyrian guards without causing permanent harm to other species. Amy had been feeding false information to Zephyrian intelligence for weeks while gathering real data about their communication, systems, and military codes. She identified the exact frequencies and protocols needed to broadcast beyond the prison's jamming systems. Her position in the communications center gave her access to equipment that could reach resistance cells. Throughout the galaxy, Ryan had trained over 50 prisoners in coordinated assault techniques adapted for their mixed abilities and species differences. His training sessions had built trust and teamwork among beings who had previously viewed each other with suspicion. The tactical units he created could work together effectively, despite having completely different physical capabilities and fighting styles. The operation began at exactly 600 hours when Lisa triggered the first system failures. Power fluctuations spread through the facility, causing lights to flicker and security doors to malfunction. The disturbances appeared random, but were carefully timed to create openings for prisoner movement. Guard stations lost communication with Central Command for brief periods that allowed coordinated strikes. Corvin used his shape-shifting abilities to impersonate guards and unlock cell doors in the maximum security section. His natural camouflage let him move through corridors without being detected by the remaining security cameras. Within minutes, dozens of dangerous prisoners were free and moving toward their assigned objectives. Under Jake's overall coordination, Nexus led a team of technically skilled prisoners to the main power distribution center where Lisa's sabotage had created the perfect opportunity for a complete takeover. His cybernetic implants came back online once he escaped his cell's suppression field and gave him enhanced speed and strength. The alien guards were overwhelmed by his augmented abilities and superior tactics. Quella coordinated prisoner movements throughout the facility, using her psychic abilities to sense guard locations and warn teams about approaching threats. Her mental communication allowed instant coordination between groups separated by long distances. She could also detect the emotional states of guards and predict their actions before they made decisions. Elder Thane led a group of older prisoners who understood the prison's history and hidden passages. His knowledge of previous escape attempts helped them avoid traps and security measures that had defeated earlier breakouts. The Mystic's centuries of experience provided wisdom that complemented Jake's tactical planning perfectly. Vash commanded the combat teams that neutralized guard stations and secured key corridors. His warrior training and natural fighting abilities made him devastatingly effective in close-quarters combat. The reptilian's leadership inspired other fighters, and his tactical instincts meshed well with Ryan's human military, Doctrine Click and his insectoid. Engineering team took control of the facilities, structural systems, and began opening sealed passages that would allow rapid movement between different prison sections. Their natural ability to work in tight spaces gave them access to areas that other species could not reach. They also prepared explosive charges to destroy critical systems during the final phase. Jake moved through the chaos, coordinating different teams and adapting the plan as situations changed. His ability to think several steps ahead and modify tactics in real time impressed even experienced warriors from military species. The prisoners began to understand why humans had earned a reputation for unpredictable success in desperate situations. Dr. Torres released her chemical weapon into the ventilation system of the guard quarters, which temporarily disabled most of the Zephyrian security forces. The compound affected their enhanced senses without causing permanent damage, but left them unable to coordinate effective resistance. Human physiology was not affected by the chemical, which gave Jake's teams a crucial advantage. Amy reached the communication center and began broadcasting coded messages to resistance cells throughout the galaxy. Her transmissions included detailed information about Zephyrian military capabilities, invasion plans, and the locations of other prison facilities. She also sent specific intelligence about Earth's defenses to help human forces prepare for the coming attack. The breakout accelerated as more prisoners joined the coordinated assault on prison security systems. Species that had been enemies in their home systems worked together under human leadership to achieve common goals. Jake's respect for alien capabilities and willingness to adapt human tactics created unity that surprised everyone, including the prisoners themselves. Warden Zekroth finally realized that this was not a random riot but a carefully planned military operation. He activated emergency protocols and called for reinforcements from the orbital defense platforms, but Lisa had already disabled the communication systems that would coordinate the response. The warden found himself trapped in his own facility, watching years of security measures collapse. Jake's teams reached the hangar bays where transport ships were kept for prisoner transfers and supply runs. The pilots and mechanics were overwhelmed by coordinated assaults from multiple directions simultaneously. Nexus and his technical teams quickly learned to operate Zephyrian spacecraft while other prisoners loaded essential supplies and equipment. The final phase involved fighting their way past the orbital defenses surrounding Kepler-7. Jake divided the escaped prisoners among several captured ships to avoid losing everyone if one vessel was destroyed. Each ship had mixed crews combining human tactical thinking with alien abilities and knowledge of Zephyrian technology. The space battle that followed demonstrated everything the Zephyrian Empire had failed to understand about human leadership capabilities. Jake's fleet used unconventional tactics that confused defense commanders who expected predictable attack patterns. The combination of human strategy and alien abilities created fighting effectiveness that exceeded what either could achieve alone. As they escaped toward human space, Jake realized that the real war was just beginning. The prison break had proven that the Zephyrian Empire could be defeated, but now they had to convince the entire galaxy to unite against a common enemy. The specimens had become the spark that would ignite the greatest rebellion in galactic history. Jake's intelligence broadcast from Kepler-7 reached human space within days and caused immediate changes in Earth's military preparations. The detailed information about Zephyrian technology, tactics, and invasion plans allowed human forces to adapt their defenses in ways that would have been impossible without advance warning. More importantly, the broadcasts reached resistance cells throughout the galaxy and sparked coordinated uprisings against Zephyrian occupation forces. The escaped prisoners scattered to their home, systems carrying word about human leadership capabilities and tactical innovations that had made the impossible breakout successful. Species that had been conquered decades earlier began organizing new resistance movements based on the coordination techniques they had learned from Jake and his crew. The prison break became a symbol of hope that spread faster than Zephyrian forces could contain. Commander Vex Thule was promoted to lead the invasion of human space, but discovered that his intelligence about human capabilities was catastrophically wrong. The research conducted at Kepler 7 had focused on individual psychology rather than collective behavior, and completely missed the human ability to inspire cooperation between different groups. Human forces displayed creativity and determination that no Zephyrian simulation had predicted accurately. The first major battle occurred when Zephyrian advance forces encountered human defense fleets near the outer colonies. Jake had been promoted to admiral and commanded a mixed fleet of human ships supported by vessels from species that had joined the growing alliance. His unconventional tactics confused Zephyrian commanders who expected humans to fight according to established military doctrine. Jake's fleet used coordination techniques developed during the prison break to maximize the effectiveness of each species' natural abilities. Human strategic thinking provided overall coordination, while alien specialists handled tasks suited to their unique capabilities. Endorian shapeshifters infiltrated enemy ships, while mystic psychics provided intelligence about enemy intentions and morale. The battle demonstrated that human leadership could unite different species in ways that created fighting effectiveness greater than the sum of individual capabilities. Zephyrian forces found themselves outmaneuvered by enemies who fought as a coordinated whole, rather than separate groups competing for glory. The tactical flexibility that Jake had learned in prison proved devastatingly effective in open combat. Dr. Torres had established medical facilities that could treat wounded beings from dozens of different species using techniques she developed while imprisoned. Her ability to adapt human medical knowledge to alien physiology kept mixed-species crews healthy during extended campaigns. More importantly, her compassionate treatment of all beings earned loyalty that transcended species boundaries. Lisa reverse-engineered, captured Zephyrian technology to create hybrid weapon systems that combined the best features of different technological approaches. Her engineering innovations gave Alliance fleets capabilities that neither humans nor aliens could have developed independently. The prison's technical systems had taught her to think beyond the limitations of any single species approach. Amy coordinated communications across language barriers using translation protocols she developed while analyzing intercepted Zephyrian messages. Her linguistic skills allowed instant communication between species that had never been able to work together effectively. The coordination she provided made large-scale Alliance operations possible for the first time. Ryan trained mixed-species special forces units in human combat techniques adapted for alien capabilities. His training programs created elite forces that could operate behind enemy lines with unprecedented effectiveness. The tactical innovations he developed during the prison break scaled up to division level operations with remarkable success. Corvin led infiltration missions that gathered intelligence about Zephyrian military plans and supply lines. His shape-shifting abilities allowed him to penetrate enemy facilities that were considered completely secure. The information he gathered helped Alliance forces stay ahead of Zephyrian strategic planning and anticipate their movements. Nexus commanded cybernetic warfare units that disrupted Zephyrian communication and control systems. His enhanced abilities and knowledge of their technology made him devastatingly effective at electronic sabotage. The techniques he used to escape from prison were applied on a galactic scale to cripple enemy coordination. The war spread throughout Zephyrian space as occupied systems rose in rebellion inspired by news of the Alliance's early victories. Species that had been conquered generations earlier rediscovered their fighting spirit when they saw that the Empire could be defeated. Human leadership provided the coordination and tactical innovation needed to turn local uprisings into effective military campaigns. Warden Zekroth was captured during a raid on another prison facility and found himself facing the same interrogation techniques he had used on Jake. The former warden discovered that human psychological warfare was far more sophisticated than Zephyrian methods and broke within days of capture. His intelligence about prison locations led to liberation campaigns that freed thousands of political prisoners at Elder Thane coordinated resistance movements among the older generation of aliens who remembered life before Zephyrian conquest. His age and wisdom gave him authority that transcended species boundaries and allowed him to unite groups that had been enemies for centuries. The mystic's guidance helped transform scattered resistance cells into effective military organizations. The climactic battle occurred when Jake led a massive alliance fleet in an assault on the Zephyrian home system. The operation required coordination between hundreds of different species and thousands of ships using tactics that had never been attempted before. Human strategic thinking provided the framework while alien specialists contributed their unique capabilities to create overwhelming force. Vexthul's forces were completely overwhelmed by an enemy that fought with unity and determination they had never encountered. The Zephyrian military doctrine was based on technological superiority and individual species capabilities, but proved ineffective against opponents who combined their strengths under unified command. Their defeat was total and decisive. The Zephyrian Empire collapsed within months as rebellion spread throughout their territory, and their military forces were systematically defeated by alliance fleets. Species that had been enemies for millennia worked together under human leadership to build a new galactic order based on cooperation rather than conquest. The former prisoners became the founders of a civilization that would last for centuries. Jake stood on the bridge of his flagship surrounded by officers from dozens of different species looking out at a galaxy transformed by their victory. The prison that was meant to break human spirit had instead become the birthplace of the greatest alliance in galactic history. The Zephyrians had captured one human, but in doing so they had created the leader who would unite the galaxy against them. The human they should never have tried to capture had become the architect of their complete destruction and the founder of a new age of galactic peace. Jake's imprisonment had taught him that species differences were strengths, rather than weaknesses when united under leadership that respected and utilized everyone's capabilities. The galaxy would never again underestimate what humans could accomplish when properly motivated.